Hey everybody, welcome to The Bottom Line. I'm Mike Nolan, and tonight... Hey guys, I didn't even know I was on the air. Oh, no, you're staying where you are, doofus. I want to know where you are at all times.
Master tricked us, that's what he did.
Hey everybody, welcome to The Bottom Line. Michael Nolan here. I'm on a shoot day, and of course that means on some shoot days I shoot more than one video at a time. But you know, before I get into the shoot proper, I thought I'd fire off with this video to express my utter contempt to the so-called Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. One of this year's inductees, Dolly Parton. No, I'm serious. Dolly Parton. Now, you pretty much would have had to be living under a rock not to have heard about this. And you know, this has been an ongoing issue for far too long. An issue that we haven't covered on this channel, but please remember, our first video went out October 28th, 2021. And we've been covering so much rock and roll ground in our past videos that I guess I was just waiting for the next bunch of ass clowns this committee would choose as inductees. Now, there's no disrespect here to Dolly Parton, nor to her fans. I think she's a fine songwriter, she's a great singer, and she's done a whole lot for country. And evidently, it takes a country singer with a little bit of rock and roll attitude to even bring out to the masses that maybe she's not the best inductee to consider. You know, this has been an ongoing issue with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame pretty much from the 80s on. And as far as I'm concerned, from that point on, this became an event that you invite children to and you give them a trophy for participating. But that's not the worst part of it. See, this is giving trophies to people who were never at the game to begin with. Now, it's not my intention to knock rap artists or hip-hop artists or country artists for that matter. But that's my point. They are hip-hop artists. They are rappers. They are country artists. They're not freaking rock and roll. You know, this goes back to the time where they would induct so-called 70s acts that were filling arenas instead of inducting bands like the Dave Clark Five, or for that matter, the Monkees. Now, I'm not saying the Monkees are the world's greatest rock band. They aren't. Hell, at the beginning, except for a couple of them, they weren't even musicians. But the Monkees became something. Whatever that is, it's certainly a hell of a lot more rock and roll than the latest rap artists from the early 2000s. Herman's Hermits is more rock and roll than half of the inductees over the last 10 years in the so-called Rock and Roll Hall of Shame. But you know what? Just do a little digging, and that's where you find out who was on the board of nominees, when, and where, and why, and how they made their decisions. And one of the evilest names in rock history comes to the fore, doesn't it? Jann Wenner. You know, I first mentioned Jann in my very first rock and roll video. And of course, that video is my part 1 video of me covering Peter Jackson's Get Back, the film that is now on Disney+. And if you recall, I wasn't too kind to Jann then either. You know, the same guy responsible for turning one of his writers who gave Paul McCartney's Ram album a positive review and insisted on him giving it a negative review. One of Paul McCartney's finest albums. He's also the ass clown that was behind putting John Lennon's infamous Rolling Stone interview out on the line, pushing at every point to get John to bring up negative aspects of the Beatles. You know, I used to buy Rolling Stone back when it was a rag. I loved it. It was great. It came folded up like a newspaper. It wasn't a magazine back then, guys. And it did have some street cred, even though Jann was there. And for a short time, I think Rolling Stone did kind of do a pretty fair job representing rock and roll. But right around the time they went corporate, and right around the time that Jann lost touch with his readership, I quit buying that rag that second. And of course, today it's nothing more than a geo-neo-political ragtag piece of crap magazine that manages to keep its readers by even adjusting their 100 top whatever lists. All right, so let's get back to the Hall of Shame, shall we? You know, all I can say is that if you're a fan of somebody who has been inducted into the Hall of Fame, and you know in your heart they're not rock and roll, what does that tell you about your beloved artist? Does he or she even represent their own style of music? Or are they an artist that's blown by the wind, accepting whatever awards come their way? That sounds like one of the Hollywood crowd to me. There's gonna be comments like, well, what is rock and roll really? And could you pass the Grey Poupon? Followed usually by blah, 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 blah. Well, that's what I hear when I hear people go off in that direction. Not that it's not an interesting question, mind you. I mean, after all, does Chick Corea fit into that? Return to Forever? What about more jazzier rock bands, okay? Now, just because there's room for discussion there, can't we at least agree on what isn't rock and roll? I mean, do we induct George Martin as an artist to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because he conducted and arranged incidental music on a couple of Beatle albums? Maybe we induct him as a great rock and roll producer somewhere, but not as an artist. You know, and I also find it interesting, especially in the rap community, there's a lot of anti-rock and roll sentiment, even by some of the artists. And as soon as they get inducted, oh my goodness God, they are now our best buddies. Well, I say enough is enough. It's time to either severely rehaul the Rock and Roll Hall of Shame or totally dismantle it and start all over again, because we are on the wrong track, folks. You know, you've seen the videos where I have criticized the modern music industry to no end. And in those videos, I didn't cover this aspect. So that's why I'm going ahead and shoot this real quick video for you guys. Now, all of the rock fans in my comment sections in all of my videos all have differing opinions. And we don't even agree on who's the greatest this or the greatest that. And you're never going to get rid of that. Actually, that's what makes rock and roll so very interesting to cover. I feel like I'm that little boy with his mother as the emperor walks past his kingdom with no clothes on going, but mommy, not even noticing that all of the other adults in the crowd have their eyes diverted shamefully to the ground.